Wednesday football. Wednesday football has already passed. The first year of a new tradition. We have Christmas Day games, and these, while they got a lot of viewership, I would not say they were good games. They're very one-sided, uneven, kind of boring matchups. But I'll skip any major review of them. I'll save that for the recap video. Just know that so far with the Wednesday games, you can see through my ESPN pick'em, I was grateful enough to get both of those correct. Chiefs over the Steelers and Ravens over the Texans. So I started the week off 2-0, and then we move into Thursday night football, in which we had a matchup between the Seattle Seahawks and the Chicago Bears. A very close fought game, nitty-gritty victory for the Seattle Seahawks, who needed a win desperately to stay in the playoff picture, and they were lucky enough to get one against the Chicago Bears. It was a fight down in the trenches. They win 6-3. This is the third time this year that Seattle has beaten Chicago 6-3, twice in baseball and now in football as well. And yeah, though it wasn't pretty, it was well needed, and Seattle stays in the hunt for a playoff spot. They do need the Los Angeles Rams to lose this week against the Cardinals in order to still be eligible with their Week 18 matchup, but it's possible. In other news for the Bears, they extend their losing streak to 10. I believe 10 is the longest in franchise history for a single season. And yeah, you do have to kind of feel for the Bears. After what was such a promising start to the season, they come out to a 4-2 start under their new rookie quarterback. Things are looking good. They're about to move to 5-2 with the game against the Commanders, and then after that Hail Mary, it's all been downhill. Lost their offensive coordinator, which I think was maybe deserved, and then lost their coach, which was also deserved, but just Bears fans really can't catch a break. So for any Bears fans out there, my heart is with you. I truly will never understand the pain fully to your extent, but you have my deepest condolences and sympathy. Hopefully it's better next year. But I think that every year, so we don't know. Anywho, with all of that, I did get that game correct as well. So lucky enough to start off this week 3-0, which is actually quite rare. Usually I'm wrong by Thursday night itself, so a bit of a good start on this week. And now we can move into our first set of actual predictions. This is gonna start off with our Saturday slate of games. This Saturday we have 3 matchups coming up. Our first one of the day will be at the standard morning time. It's a matchup between the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 9-6, and the New England Patriots, who are 3-12. Now, another interesting matchup, I think, quarterback-wise, because Drake May, as he goes up against these opponents, I feel like he has a lot to learn. Last week, going against Josh Allen, I feel like there are shades of Josh Allen in Drake May's plays, the way that he's able to run with the ball, pick it up and go scramble with it. Some of the passing, obviously he doesn't have the same level of arm, but in terms of build and the way that he's able to throw on the run, it's like a very early version of him, and I'm hoping that he develops further that way. I think that Justin Herbert has a lot of great skills that he could pick up from this matchup as well. Because let's face it, Justin Herbert probably has the most comparable receiver room to Drake May at this point. So if Drake May is going to learn how to elevate his wide receiver room play with what he's been dealt, this is a great guy to learn from for this year in particular. And in terms of actual matchup outlook, I don't think that this game will go in favor of anyone except for the Chargers. Actually, I guess that's subjective. I think it'll go in favor of both teams, as in LA will win and clinch a playoff spot, and I think that the Patriots will lose here and retain the number 2 overall pick, because as of right now, that's what they have, and that's very favorable for them. Obviously, not in the market for a quarterback you also have the Titans, and maybe you have the Browns. You have a handful of teams behind you that might be wanting to trade up, and you could trade back. Or if you really like the options at number 2, you take someone. Maybe they want someone like, I don't know the draft class all that well. I guess Travis Hunter, you could take him. But yeah, things like that. And yeah, when it's all said and done, though, I think that the Chargers, they're coming off a big win. They have extra rest, and they know that they just need to hammer one more in, and they clinch their playoff spot. I think that they'll definitely do it in the Patriots. While they are making things competitive, they looked pretty cool in the first half of last week. Still way too many turnovers and penalties. It's just, they do a lot to take away from their own skill. I feel like they have more potential than they've been displaying, but there's still a lot of self-inflicted errors. So still got a ways to go in weeding those out. And yeah, I'm going to go with the Chargers winning here. Next up, we have a matchup between the 9-6 Denver Broncos and the 7-8 Cincinnati Bengals. Very important matchup for both teams here. The Broncos, I believe, with a win, they clinched their playoff spot. But the Bengals still in the hunt for a playoff spot as well. They just need to win out, and they need the Broncos to lose out, and they need possibly a loss from the Colts and the Dolphins. So when it's all said and done, it doesn't sound like it's really in their control, but their playoff picture does get a lot more visible if they get a much-needed victory here. And you know, the Bengals, while they haven't been super dominant in the last couple weeks, I do think that they have been able to string wins together, and they're still hungry. They're still fighting. They know that they got the season off on the wrong foot, but this is a team that still has a lot to play for. You know, Jamar Chase playing for the Triple Crown. Joe Burrow, obviously, I don't think he's going to be in that conversation, but going for maybe he has incentives to work towards, postseason incentives, things like that. Trey Hendrickson, great year on his end as well. And the Broncos, last week, they did show that they're still kind of younger, immature. I don't really know what it is. I can't say for certain what happened last week. They had such a strong lead, and then they just went away from their first half game script through only short passes, kind of got taken apart defensively. And yeah, if the Chargers offense can dismantle you defensively like that, the Bengals offense, I don't know, it's a lot more impressive in my opinion. Now all of this does come down to the Bengals defense getting stops, and quite frankly, it's hard to say if they'll do that. Bengals defense isn't really known for being able to do that, but if there's any time that they need to step up and deliver, regardless of anything that has happened this season, it's right now. Because if you win this game, like, you can't get eliminated from the playoff picture this week, I don't think. So this is like a big must-win situation. The Broncos, on the other hand, they don't have that same level of pressure. Obviously, they're going to try and play with that level of intensity and pressure, but I do think that, like, come December, a guy like Joe Burrow, he's been in these late season situations. He's played in January, things like that. I know I've talked about how the Bengals haven't been able to overcome their defense. I think they're really going to put it all in this game. We're going to see them try very hard. And I want to see the Bengals win this game. I think it makes the last week so much more exciting. Because, you know, if the Broncos and the Chargers all win, then week 17, there's nothing to really watch on the AFC side of things. It's all set in stone. So, for the sake of competition and everything, I would like to see the Bengals win this game. So I'm rolling with them on Saturday. Alright, and after that, we get to our last game on Saturday. There's going to be a matchup between the Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams. I mentioned this earlier. The Rams only need to clinch a NFC West title this year is a win in this game against the Cardinals. Now the Cardinals unfortunately, with their loss last week against the Panthers, they have been eliminated from postseason play. They don't really have anything to play for at this point, except for a spoiler. And as we saw last Sunday night with the Dallas Cowboys, sometimes a team can do really well after finding out that they're not making the postseason. And I think that might be something that the Cardinals do play for. They're a little bit down in the dumps knowing that they went against a team like Carolina and they couldn't get the job done. They're not seeing the postseason this year. And with all that frustration, they're going to need some sort of vent, some way to channel their angry energy. And I do think what's a better way to do that than to take down a divisional opponent and make their playoff spot at jeopardy. So Cardinals are going to come out swinging. I think they're going to give it everything they have. The Rams, on the other hand, I do think that they're just all around a better team. We've seen them in the last 2 weeks really show off their defensive prowess against the 49ers and the Jets. And as far as offense, we saw a couple weeks ago that toe-to-toe, they can go toe-to-toe with the best in the league, with the Bills dropping, I believe it was 44 or 48 on them. A large number of points. And yeah, since Cooper Kupp and Buccaneers have come back from injury, they've just been a revitalized team. Even in the weeks where Cooper Kupp or Matthew Stafford aren't really lighting up the box score, you've still got Kyron Williams, you've still got Puka, who are contributing to these big games. And yeah, when it's said and done, I do think that the Rams will win on Saturday and swoop up that NFC West title. So with that, we move into our Sunday slate of games. First up, we've got the 7-8 Indianapolis Colts taking on the 2-13 New York Giants. Now, there's two things I want to address here. Number one, the fact that the Indianapolis Colts are still in the hunt for a playoff spot. And yeah, they're in like the same boat as the Bengals, where I think they probably feel like it's a control your own destiny type of thing. As long as they keep stringing together wins. Obviously, I think that they have less input, less at say, because the Bengals, by winning, they're taking down an opponent that's ahead of them. The Colts, on the other hand, if not only do they need to win, but they also need to root for the Bengals in this week. And so, they're just going to have to do their part and win this game, which I think should be very easy. We saw this New York Giants team last week with Drew Lock throw 2 pick sixes and have another turnover, I believe it was. And so, New York's doing everything to lose itself games at this point. They currently hold the number 1 overall spot in the draft. And I don't think that they're going to make the same mistake as the Raiders. And I do think that was a mistake when we're talking about rejuvenating, rebuilding your franchise. 6th pick is a huge slide, I think, at this point. You cut your losses, you try and tank, and yeah, with 2 weeks left, winning here really does hurt your team a lot. And the Giants, I don't think we're at risk of them winning a game, but even if we are, I feel like the Colts are a hungry opponent. Last week, it's like 2 teams that are really bad between the Raiders and Jaguars, and sometimes you want to beat up other trash to prove that you're not as trash as them. Yeah, the Giants could ruin the Colts' chance at the playoffs here, but I feel like what do you really gain out of that? Your draft spot gets worse. Indianapolis, they would feel horrible losing to the worst team in the league. It's a lose-lose for everyone. Not that, I mean, players are going to play. They're always going to go out and compete and give it everything that they've got. But offensively and defensively, I think that the Colts are better, and I think that they're going to go out and get a victory. So, have the Colts winning here. Now, after that, we move into a matchup with the 4-11 New York Jets and the 12-3 Buffalo Bills. An AFC East matchup. The Jets, they've been like somewhat good the last couple weeks. Taking it down to the wire with the Jags, keeping it competitive with the Rams, and there's another team that they played in that stretch that feel like they held their own decently. The Rodgers to Devontae Adams connection has been looking as strong as ever in this season, but the Bills on the other hand, I think that they have found out they're not going to be playing for that one seed anymore. Logistically impossible for them to finish as the one, but now if the team is playing for anything, it's got to be Josh Allen's MVP candidacy. We saw the O-line give him a MVP chain for Christmas, and yeah, I'm sure that they all hear the noise about Lamar Jackson and how he's catching up or overtaking Josh Allen, and the only way to really solidify Josh Allen's case is if he continues to go band for band, if his team finishes as higher than Lamar Jackson's and he continues to match Lamar's production from here on out. I do still think it's Josh Allen's MVP to lose, and so I think we're going to have to see 3 touchdown performance and yeah, definitely a win. And I think that the Bills, they won it all this year. They want the MVP, they want the Super Bowl. I think that Josh Allen has been willing them to it, and let's see how far he can will them. So going with the Bills victory here to go to 13-3, while the Jets fall to 4-12. Next up, we've got a matchup between the 3-12 Las Vegas Raiders and the 5-10 New Orleans Saints. Now this one gets a little bit dicey with the Raiders winning last week, taking down one of the worst teams in the league in the Jaguars. The Raiders now climb to a record of 3-12, slipping from 1-6 in the 2025 NFL Draft. Saints, on the other hand, coming off their worst loss this season, losing 0-34 to the Packers on primetime football. That's gonna leave a bad taste in the mouth, and it's tough because I don't know. I feel like if you're a bad team and you saw the Raiders and what they did last week, you're gonna not want to make the same mistake. I feel like bad teams are going to see the media coverage that the Raiders are getting, see the draft fallout of their decisions, and I think that bad teams aren't going to be really incentivized. Players on bad teams are always going to try and win. But if I'm front offices, if I am coaches, if I am GMs, I am definitely worried. I mean, GM, you're worried because you want a better pick. If you are an owner, you probably want a better pick for a better future. If you're a head coach, you are in the worst position because obviously you need to go out there and motivate your guys at the risk of losing your own job because you are going to get blamed for them. And that's what we already have shades of for Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce gets one last week. He says, go talk to the GM about the draft pick. If he gets another win here, I don't know, it's so late in the season that we probably do see him go. Just because I feel like once you've already established that you are one of the worst teams in the league and you have not been competitive, your last win was in September. What is I don't know. It's a tough place for you to not get blamed by your bosses, and I do think that Antonio Pierce is going to get a lot of heat if he wins another game. Not that he shouldn't try to, not that the Raiders shouldn't try to, but that's inevitably what's going to happen. The Saints, on the other hand, they got whooped bad, and I think if there's any team that wants to save face more, it's got to be the Saints. I don't think that you get blown out 34-0 on prime time, and then you come back around the next week thinking like, yeah, let's lose again. I do think that getting wiped out like that is a different kind of embarrassment, and you come back more aggressive and agitated. The Raiders, I think they get this win. They probably take their foot off the gas a little bit. They're busy celebrating when they just had Christmas, all this, all that. I do think that the Saints come back out. Sorry, that was a little sharp. I think that the Saints come back out and they return to how they were playing before they played a game against the Packers, and I think that they are able to take down this Raiders team. Ultimately, I do think that this is going to be a very ugly game. You've got Spencer Rattler competing with Aiden O'Connell. You don't have Max Crosby. I don't know if there's a Alvin Kamara, but I don't think there's Alvin Kamara. It's just not a pretty matchup. I think it's going to be an ugly game, and I do think that the Saints are going to win it. After that, we move into a matchup between the 4-11 Carolina Panthers and the 8-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is a must-win for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have to take down the Carolina Panthers because they are right now tied with the Falcons in wins, and they cannot advance to the postseason whilst being tied with the Falcons, so they need to get back ahead of them. If you lose this game, then you're banking on Atlanta losing its next two games as your only shot of making it. Your path to the playoffs is really in jeopardy with a loss here, so Tampa Bay has everything to play for at this moment. Carolina, on the other hand, they've been playing spoiler. Bryce Young has come back. He has looked a lot better. They've been trying their best to ruin all the other teams' postseason chances, and I think it's been fun for them. You've got the new quarterback nickname for Bryce Young with the Carolina Reaper, and I think that it's a pretty cool name. Bryce Young finally showing signs of life, of energy. I think that this is the happiest I've seen him since he's been drafted, because it's the first time that they're having like any sort of success with him. And it sounds like they're probably going to roll out with him for another year. They're going to try the Bryce Young experiment once again. And so you took this team to overtime a few weeks back. You nearly had it. And then, last week, the Cardinals backing home. You've had a lot of great weeks. I think that the Panthers come out, and this is not going to be an easy game for the Buccaneers, but I do think that the Buccaneers, they're going to want it, and they're really going to train hard. I feel like if there's anything Baker Mayfield is going to do is he's going to take a loss, and he's going to absolutely work off his butt to try and get them back in it. We've seen them battle back from injury this season, and I feel like this is another one of those moments where they're kind of back to the underdog, and they always do better as the underdog. So give me the Bucs on Sunday over the Panthers, moving to 9-7. Next up, we've got a AFC South divisional matchup between the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, both sitting at a record of 3-12. Hard to say. Last week I thought that the Jaguars could beat the Raiders, and they could not. The Titans, on the other hand, they're really wishy-washy. That win against the Texans was so crazy, because then they come out and every week they just have like 4 or 5 turnovers. Last week, even with Mason Rudolph, and they had so many turnovers, and it's just really hard to imagine that these guys are going to be winning games when they're turning the ball over so much. The Jaguars, on the other hand, well, they don't. I mean, they also turn the ball over twice. Ultimately, I think that the Titans are going to turn the ball over more than the Jaguars are. And I also think that the Jaguars have a couple positive things going for them, like Brian Thomas Jr., and they do have Trevor Lawrence under contract. And yeah, the Titans, on the other hand, I think everyone's got to be kind of deflated with their recent performances. There's so many turnovers, and their quarterback situation is so bad. There's also got to be some head coaching pressure to not do well, because yeah, you're going to want to address the quarterback position. That's probably through the draft. So we'll see. We'll see if the players can outplay their coaches. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But ultimately, I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be the team that comes out on top and move to 4-12 after this week. Now, after that, we've got an NFC East matchup between the 7-8 Dallas Cowboys and the 12-3 Philadelphia Eagles. And look, this will be an interesting one, because we've got backup competition once again. Cooper Rush versus Kenny Pickett. No Jalen Hurts in this game. They're going out with Kenny Pickett once again. And I don't think it'll be a wipe. I think that if it was with Jalen Hurts, I do think it would be a wipe. I know that we did see this Dallas Cowboys team go out primetime football and beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but you've got to understand that Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I don't know, they're an interesting team. They can compete. They've beaten really good teams this year, like the Lions and the Eagles. They've also suffered some not so good losses. The Eagles, on the other hand, they get their third loss of the season last week to a Jaden Daniels-led Commanders team that is in the playoff picture, has been in the playoff picture for a long time, has one of the best offenses. The Cowboys, on the other hand, haven't been that good offensively, haven't been that good defensively, and they do give up a lot of rushing yards. And if the Eagles are going to win this game, they're probably going to do it on the legs of Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, 2 games left, is not too far off of that all-time rushing record for Eric Dickerson's most rushing yards in a season. I think that they're going to be fully motivated to try and get him to break that record, and I think along the way they'll win this game. And I feel like it's, that's just the way it's going to pan out. So I've got the Eagles winning that. Next up, we have a matchup between the 7-8 Miami Dolphins and the 3-12 Cleveland Browns. Here's another matchup like Giants one, where you've got one team and the Dolphins that's trying to make the postseason, and they need to win this game. Browns, on the other hand, I don't even think they're trying to win games with the Jameis Winston's sitting decision. You won a couple impressive games against divisional rivals, and if you don't roll with that guy, I don't think that you're really committed to winning. So the Browns, if you win this game with someone who is not named Jameis Winston, I guess you prove me right, but it also doesn't help you in your future. I don't know. I'm kind of bitter about the Browns season. Like, yes, Deshaun Watson got hurt. Yes, you moved away from him, and I think that's ultimately a bad decision you made in the past, but you're moving towards progress. You give Jameis Winston that starting role. I feel like he does pretty well in a couple different games, and you give him such a short leash. You gave Deshaun Watson $250 million. You can't let Jameis Winston at least start the rest of the season. I don't know. It's kind of infuriating how dumb they can be at times. And yeah, I think that they deserve to lose this one. I think the Dolphins, they've persevered. A couple weeks ago, they did drop that game to the Texans, and that was kind of bad for them, but they're not out of it. They won last week against the Niners, and this team is worse than the Niners by quite a bit. I think that the Dolphins go out and they win this game. I don't know how cold it is in Cleveland, but hopefully not too cold, but I do think that the Dolphins can get it done. Sorry. Anywho, after that, we've got a NFC North matchup between the 11-4 Green Bay Packers and the 13-2 Minnesota Vikings. Game of the week here, probably. You've got two teams that have a lot to play for. The Packers, well, they can't really catch up and take that one seed from the Lions. They can, this is a big test for them. If they can win against the Minnesota Vikings, that would be huge. You could maybe even surpass the Minnesota Vikings in standings. Right now you're stuck as the 6th seed. Maybe you can climb to the 5th seed, send Minnesota down a rank. Minnesota has even more variability. You can win this week, win next week, take the 1 seed from the Lions potentially. I think that's how it works. Or you lose both games, you fall to the 6th. So there's a huge amount of variability to the rest of Minnesota's season. Now, personally, it's Toyotathon. We're in the midst of Toyotathon. Even Jordan Love has made everyone aware of it. He's wearing that t-shirt a couple weeks ago, acknowledging the fact that Toyotathon does elevate the Packers' level of play. We're watching them come off a 34-0 victory last week. Very big statement win. And yeah, they've looked good. In all phases last week. The Vikings, I'm not going to say they don't look good either, but I think that the last time these two teams matched up, it was without a fully healthy Jordan Love. And I think that the Packers have more tape on on the Vikings. Based on what they did last time, the Vikings, on the other hand, they got Jordan Love, who was not at full strength, and I think that this could be a different ball game now. It really can go both either way, and I think that majority of people, it shows they're picking the Vikings 63% in favor of them. But we saw how close that Seattle Seahawks game was last week, and though the Vikings did come out on top, I think that this Packers team is a lot scarier than the Seahawks, and if the Seahawks could do that, wait till you see the Packers. I'm going with the upset here. Packers moving to 12-4, send the Minnesota Vikings down to 13-3, and get the win out in Minnesota. After that, we've got our Sunday night football matchup between the 8-7 Atlanta Falcons and the 10-5 Washington Commanders. This is actually the very first time we will see two rookie quarterbacks featured on primetime TV in the season that they're drafted. And I believe that's what the record I saw was, or the stat I saw was. So yeah, we've got Michael Penix Jr. in this Atlanta Falcons team against the 10-5 Washington Commanders. In my opinion, the Commanders are just far better as a team. The Falcons, they're reinventing their identity really late in the season. Yes, you did get a victory last week against the Giants, but albeit the league worst Giants that gave you 2 big sixes. I don't think that points are going to come that easy against the Washington Commanders. Michael Penix Jr. still has a lot to figure out in the playbook. Still has to adjust to being a starting quarterback, whereas Jaden Daniels has been doing it for 15 weeks. He has them firmly in a playoff spot at this point. Michael Penix Jr. has one game under his belt, and now he has to play on primetime TV. I think that the lights are going to be too bright, and I think that the Commanders, they also know that, like, hey, with all the other action that's happening on Sunday, if they win this game and the Packers lose this game, they're kind of in the conversation for the 6th seed, and I think they realize that that could be beneficial to them as well. So Commanders with a big win last week against the Eagles, I think that they go on to beat another bird team here and move to 11-5, adding on another win to an already impressive season. And finally, we've got our Monday Night Football matchup. And at the start of the year, man oh man, would this have been very fun, very impressive. We have the NFC Championship rematch between the Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers. But this season has not been the same for these two teams. The Detroit Lions obviously getting better on an already impressive run. The 49ers, on the other hand, no, complete opposite. They're out of the playoffs. Can't even finish with a winning record. They've had a lot of injuries. They actually haven't even had as many injuries as the Lions. Offensively, they've had more, but defensively, the Lions take the cake. And the Lions have just done a much better job at responding and, rising up to the occasion. So, 49ers deflated. They can't seem to get anything going this year. The Lions, we saw how they did the Cowboys earlier this year in that game. We know about all the Dan Skipper controversy with the Cowboys last year, and we saw how they went out and they whooped them. They did not stop. They just kept going and going and going. I think Dan Campbell is going to very aggressively play call this game. I think that he's going to go out there, he's going to run 4 fourth down plays if it takes it, and I think that he's going to drop at least 30 points on the 49ers because this guy is a guy that does hold grudges, and he is petty like that. And I think that the 49ers are in much worse shape than they were last year. Back-to-back losses for this team. They don't look very good. And I think that the Lions, they still have everything to prove. They're the 1 seed, but every single week they go out there like their entire livelihood is on the line, and they know that the Vikings are right behind them. So they still have every bit of motivation to go out there and dish out as many points as they can. So Lions, I've got them winning in this game. And that about does it for this week's subscribe. I'll be putting out more videos as the weeks progress. Once again, happy holidays to all of you that celebrate. I know that we passed Christmas Day and the first day of both Kwanzaa and Hanukkah, so if you're in those